Hello Rosenbergers and welcome to my channel where I make videos. I know in the past I've said that my name was Rosenberg the Wise. That was actually a lie. That is not my real name, and my real name is actually Ali Rosenthal. But on this channel I would like to switch the name to Antifa for personal and branding reasons. I think it's cute, I think it's funny, I think it sums up the vibe. As you may have guessed from my fancy pants attire today, we will be talking about something that is very important to me. Accessibility in higher education. College. Specifically Smith College, the one that I go to, the one that I attend. For those of you who don't know, Smith College is a small liberal arts school in Northampton, Massachusetts, founded in the late 1800s. It was originally an all-women's college, but now it also includes other gender minorities. My first impressions of this school was that it was a liberal utopia, where we'd all braid each other's leg hair and sing Kumbaya, and that's kind of how Smith brands itself. And that's not wrong. I don't know if any town has a higher concentration of crunchy, queer leftists than Northampton, Massachusetts. One time I asked the president of the college to sign my box of PBR, and she said maybe if I came back with something organic, she would consider it. And that's the kind of school that Smith is. And I love it. I'm going to say some critical things in this video essay, but at the end of the day, I love Smith College, and I'm very glad I came here, and I'd recommend it to pretty much anyone who'd listen. When I applied to Smith, I assumed the school would have all the disability support I could ask for just because they told me it would, and it fit what I understood to be their brand. Looking back, of course, that was naive. I mean, they told me what I wanted to hear so that I didn't roll, and I believed them because I was 17 and I wanted it to be true. But before we talk about accessibility at Smith, let's take a step back and talk about disability theory. There are two primary lenses for thinking about disability, the medical lens and the social lens. Both propose solutions to the same problem. Put simply, you're trying to fit a round peg, disabled student, into a square hole, a standard classroom. The medical lens says that we should make the peg square by medicating the student, giving them accommodations, letting them use assistive technology, basically just doing what's necessary so that the student can get by in a standard classroom without the classroom having to change. The social lens, on the other hand, proposes that we should focus on fixing the whole by redesigning the classroom. You can do this by applying Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. I'll get more into this later, but the main idea is that if you provide a wide variety of ways for a student to engage with the information and demonstrate their understanding, you can essentially create an environment where anyone can succeed. Most people agree that in practical application, you can't solely rely on either lens's solution. You need an informed teacher with an accessible classroom as the baseline, and then you can use meds, accommodations, and assistive tech to get the rest of the way there. As you may have guessed, the general attitude toward disability in America aligns more with the medical lens, reflecting the larger culture of individual responsibility. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that. In this mentality, we, the disabled, are the exception, and therefore, it is our responsibility to fit in, and not society's responsibility to make itself accessible to us. You can see proof of this everywhere. Both inside and outside the world of education, spaces are not designed to accommodate our needs. This isn't because of any sort of intentional malice or grand conspiracy. It's just because we're simply not considered. Schools don't implement strictly timed, standardized tests to sabotage students with learning disabilities. They just want to make sure that the other students in the proctor can eventually leave and go about the rest of their day. Architects don't design multi-floor apartment buildings without elevators to deliberately exclude people with mobility issues. They're just on a budget and need to maximize space. Baseball stadiums don't display all those giant flashing screens and advertisements because they're trying to overstimulate those with autism or sensory processing disorder. They're only trying to keep the rest of the audience entertained, in the likely case that the game of baseball will be unable to do so. Sorry, Dad. Go Phillies! You'll get him next time. But what does this mean for education in America? For those of you who don't know, I have, among other things, profoundly severe ADHD. My processing speed is in the first percentile, meaning that I am quite literally the slowest of the slow. I can think the same intelligent thoughts as other people, it just takes me longer to do it. As you might guess, this makes it harder to complete assignments in a time frame designed for someone with a normal processing speed. So to compensate, Uncle Sam gave me a 504 and an IEP. For those of you who don't know, a 504 refers to section, you guessed it, 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. It says that I'm legally entitled to quote-unquote reasonable accommodations, because you can always count on American legislation for super objective and forcible phrasing. Thank you, Nikki. Basically, with the 504, the government's saying that someone has to teach me. And they also have to provide me with accommodations that put me on equal footing with the neurotypical students, theoretically at least. Because otherwise they might say, hey, this student is too much work and too expensive to take care of, someone else deal with it. Now, the 504 says someone has to deal with it. Private schools can kick me around all they want, but public schools have to either teach me or find someone who can for free, which is why we should never abolish public schooling. And an IEP, or individualized education plan, does everything the 504 does while also serving as a sort of cheat sheet that tells teachers how to teach me based on the data from my testing and insight from other teachers. But even with all of these fancy legal documents, the quality of my educational experience, like that of millions of other disabled Americans, has always been reliant on my own ability to self-advocate and my teachers' willingness to accommodate my needs, which obviously is varied drastically class to class and year to year. I managed to get through high school relatively fine, but once I got to college, it became much harder to keep my head above water. So I sat down with an expert to find out why.
I'm Professor Shannon Audley, and I've worked at Smith since 2012.
What kind of disability services are American K through 12 schools required to provide versus colleges?
In terms of responding to a student's disability or an accommodation, the school is required to do everything possible to not only meet that student's needs, but make sure that that student is successful. For the most part, students are expected to do exactly the same as every other student, and the teacher has to do whatever is necessary to make sure that that child is getting the same exact learning experience in terms of kind of knowledge and output. They have to hold every child to the same standard no matter what and provide everything in between to help that child get there. In college, that same guarantee does not exist. A student can have an accommodation as long as it doesn't disrupt with the professor's learning goals, that the professor will follow it. But if a professor believes that the accommodation, for example, extra time, is not compatible with the way that they designed their course, then they do not have to provide that accommodation. That is, they only have to provide what's known as a reasonable accommodation. And so it will depend on the professor to kind of figure it out.
So essentially for K through 12 schools, the success of the accommodations is measured through the academic performance of the students. If you don't succeed, they reevaluate and change your accommodations accordingly. But in college, if you don't succeed, higher education might just not be for you. Professors who've never studied education or disability studies can just say, "F them kids," and deny accommodations based on a whim. But wait, there's more.
I think that the other difference is that when a child has an IEP in K through 12, the information goes from teacher to teacher. A student does not have to go to each individual teacher and remind them that this is my ability, my disability, or this is my accommodation. In college, students are the ones who are required to send a letter. They are required to inform the professor, and they're even oftentimes required to tell the professor how they want it to be enacted in the course. And they're often asked to request that particular accommodation.
So this might not seem like that big of a deal to some people. Just another example of Gen Z complaining about having to do the bare minimum and coordinate their accommodations. But let's see what this looks like in practice. Think of something as simple as assigned readings. The average film major is assigned hundreds of pages each week. Most students can just do the reading. Easy as that. But not you, dear viewer, you need an audio option. Is there an audiobook, you ask? Of course not. This is a fancy niche academic book. They never have audiobooks for those. Better ask the professor what to do. You go to office hours and you ask the professor. The professor says go to ODS, Office of Disability Services. You schedule an appointment. There's only 2 people working there, and about half the students on this campus have accommodations, so they can get you in about a month. A month of struggling in class because you couldn't finish the assigned readings later. ODS tells you that they have to rip apart your book so that they can individually scan each page to create a digital file that you can plug into your text-to-speech software. And it's fine, whatever. So much for the rental. You fully buy the very expensive textbook just so they can rip it apart. And the semester's almost over at this point, but finally, you have the files and you're ecstatic. You boot up the text-to-speech software and you drag and drop the files and you plug them into your software and The files were too blurry for your text-to-speech software to understand. Now, this might seem like some far-fetched worst-case scenario, but it actually happened to me in my first semester of college. It was my first ever experience trying to advocate for myself in higher education, and it felt like the whole school was trying to say, you don't belong here. I couldn't hack it. Skill issue. What you gonna do? So yeah, I'm one disabled student who's had bad experiences, but you don't have to take it from me. Please state your name and class year.
My name is Morgan, and I am a junior.
My name is Bailey, and I'm graduating of class of 2024.
If you're comfortable doing so, please describe the nature of your disability.
So I have numerous disabilities, the biggest of which is I'm legally blind. It's been that way since birth, and then more recently I have had a traumatic brain injury, which affects kind of everything from walking to paying attention.
I have anxiety and like some mood disorder things, ADHD, and potentially some autistic traits.
What kind of accommodations do you need?
Do I need or do I get?
Let's talk about what you get first.
Testing in an alternate location, extended time across the board. Oh, and I guess hypothetically audio accessible materials like text-to-speech.
What are my accommodations? Extra time, screen reader accessibility. I said I have mobility accommodation, so making sure that the classroom setup is actually accessible, making sure that I can get to my seat. There are no stairs in the classroom. Preferential seating, and a whole bunch of others.
Describe the process of using these accommodations at Smith.
Like, it's suggested that at the beginning of each semester, you have a meeting with each of your professors, being like, I have these issues and I need these accommodations. And then you talk about how you would make that work for the class. Usually your teachers forget by, the first test, like month in. Anytime I want to use an accommodation, I email my professor like, hey, remember that accommodation thing that I told you about? That we discussed at the beginning of the year, and I'm gonna cash that in right now. And then we'll talk about, okay, well, is it even possible at this point? The entire process is really self-motivated.
If it's for the fall semester, I will start in the summer. And if it's for the spring semester, I will start as soon as I register for classes. I will contact the professor, talk about my accessibility needs, set up a meeting, send them my accommodation letter, and talk about what does this mean for this class specifically. I think my accommodation letter is like 4 pages long, but like, although there are a whole bunch of accommodations on the letter, what actually makes sense for this class? Will there be movies in the class? Making sure that any websites that we use are accessible. If I can't access the materials, how am I supposed to do the work? How am I supposed to participate in class? A lot of the time it ends up being a weird kind of hybrid class where there'll be either a student to help me if there are things that can't be made accessible, or we'll have to just change the material that the professor assigns. So yeah, it's a whole complicated process. It really shouldn't be this hard.
Organizing things and talking to professors and sending emails and coordinating, those are also kind of like my main struggles. The whole process just reinforces my self-hatred because I gotta continually explain to people, like, why can't you just turn in your assignments on time? Why can't you just, like, take the test like everyone else does? Why can't you just, like, be on time to class? And it's like, well, either I'm a horrible person or I guess I have these, problems. I guess I'm broken. I'll just, like, disclose that to every professor ever.
Do you feel that Smith markets itself accurately in terms of accessibility?
No.
The extent of most of the disclaimers on the website is like, oh, if you have any troubles, like, don't worry about it, because you just go to ODS and that you're fine. I mean, yeah, you can go to ODS, but, like, going to ODS doesn't change the fact that no teacher gets really, like, trained in, like, what is a disability and how can we be accommodating for people with different needs. A lot of these professors are like primarily researchers, and then they also have to teach a class. I feel like accommodating disabilities is like their last priority, which is fair, I guess, but it just sucks for me.
Smith advertises itself as a liberal utopia, free from sexism, free from racism, free from ableism. Smith College has a lot to grow. One of the things that's so simple that affects kind of everyone, making sure the elevators are up to code. Why haven't some elevators been inspected since 2019? That's before the pandemic. And especially for students who can't take the stairs. like, I don't want to die or get trapped in an elevator. Like, what are you gonna do? So many times my handicap buttons don't even work. But then it's me struggling for 5 minutes trying to open the door, get myself through the door. I use a walker. I gotta hold my walker. I gotta push the walker in. I also have to hold the door. It's complicated. Just make sure the handicap buttons work. I feel like I personally am the watchdog to know whenever a handicap button is not working. It's not accessible.
Talk about the bathroom.
I'm taking acting this semester. The acting class is in the front of the building, but the bathroom is in the way back of the building. You have to go outside of the building because there are steps to get down to the bathroom. You have to go outside, walk about a block, re-enter the building, go through a mini maze, like the horror movie with the two twins. The Shining hallway. Once you pass the twins, you can finally get to the restroom. You would think a bathroom would be a human right. I should be able to just walk through the building to get to the bathroom, but no, it has to be super complicated.
I have a lot of trouble when it's you're looking for the reading you're supposed to be doing, and you have to do a lot of clicking and searching and finding before you just sit down and actually do the reading, which is also hard for me. I emailed them at some point, can I just have a consolidated folder of all the readings? And they told me specifically that because there was a research component of the class, I was required to go into the database and look for this specific reading that she told us to read every week. And there were, of course, 3 of them per class. Oh my God, you had to go to the syllabus to figure out what the reading was, and then go, there was a code too, 2-letter phrases OH, and then you go to the CMB, and then I'm I can't remember this thing. Then you gotta go to the database and you gotta search it up and make sure you have the right one. And then I was so exhausted from trying to just figure out what I was supposed to do that I don't think I could even access many of those assignments, much less try and read them. Not to mention that a lot of those were not screen reader accessible.
Can you talk a little bit about getting stuff from the library?
Yeah, so getting stuff for the library is awful. I hate the library. Nielsen has a lot of books, it has a lot of resources, but they do not think about people with vision impairments. The library should know how to deal with people with vision impairments. I'm sure in their 150 years, I am not the first person. But they don't know how to deal with me. I go and check out books, especially for any projects that I have. I say, I can't read the book. There is no electronic version. Or if there's an electronic version, it's not screen reader accessible. I go to the library and say, hi, I need help. I need this book, but it's not accessible to me. Can we do something? They say, it is not our job. Please go to ODS. So then I trek across campus and I say, hi, I need this book from the library. It is not accessible. How can we make it accessible? They say, it is not our job. Go to the library. So I go back to the library and say, ODS sent me here. Said it's not their job. It's a library problem. And they said, well, we don't know how to deal with this. It's all right, then we need to do something where I usually end up having to send an email to both parties involved, ODS and the library, and we have to then come up with a solution. It has been everything from ODS scanning books to make them screen reader accessible. It has been somebody getting a student to read the book to me, which is very weird, because then you have to be beholden to somebody else's time, buying a different electronic copy of the book, put it in the library website, and then it's accessible to everybody. It has gone from having to use different avenues, like there's archives from the Library of Congress for visually impaired people that I do have access to. So sometimes it's going to the Library of Congress to get this stupid book. It should not be this complicated. There should be somebody who knows saying, it is me. I am the person you go to.
Can you tell me a bit about the access ban?
Yes. So I am very passionate about this because I've been dealing with it for over a year now. And there are just so many issues with how Smith College has decided to structure this very important utility for these students. It has gone through many different changes. Well, it's always been run by campus safety, but at first it was officers driving the van, which is very scary when an officer in a tactical vest drives you anywhere. It has gone from students but only being available during weekdays. That means they did not want me to go and do anything on the weekends. I was not having that. It took me going to ODS, to the dean's office, to the dean of college life, and to Title IX to get this problem resolved. But even now, even just this weekend, I'm still having issues with them refusing to give me rides on the weekends. To this semester where it's kind of a mix of both. On the weekends, you have to call campus safety. So you have to call like the emergency number or whatever to call for a ride. I did that. As I was doing it, minding my own business, the audacity of the operator said, "No, we are busy today. You can't," because there was some like little track meet or whatever for the high school students. Even if there was a problem with the van drivers or they were going to be longer, they had to take me where I needed to go because I had gone through all these avenues this past semester fighting for this right. It took me saying, do I have to go to your supervisor for me to get to the ride? I don't like to be like a Karen, but if I have to defend myself, to make sure that I get the equal opportunity as any other student here on campus, I will do so. This van is a van for disabled students, even though I feel like this semester that right has been abused. Not by the students, but by campus safety. This is a van to make sure that campus is accessible to the people on campus who cannot get around using their feet. It is an integral part of campus life for these students. Though we are few in numbers, we have a right to get around just as much as able-bodied students.
How have notions of individual responsibility / like the medical lens affected your self-perception? So like having to advocate for yourself.
I think the onus should not be on me to disclose my entire medical history to a person that I barely know. This is personal to me. If I won't choose to do it, that's fine, but I should not be forced to do it. How Smith College does it now, it kind of feels like I have to justify the reasons why I got these accommodations and then tell you very personal details about my life, like, that I may or may not want to share. I have taken classes at Smith where they have gotten my accommodations list. I have talked to the professors, but yet the accommodations are not being met. It's intimidating to go to a professor and say, like, you're doing this wrong and we had this talk and you're not doing this right. And knowing some people's personalities, they can retaliate because they think this is a choice. It's not a choice. It's something I have to deal with, and it's annoying because I would just rather do it myself.
By now you're probably thinking, Allie, we get it. Being disabled sucks, but what are we supposed to do about it? It's not like there's a totally reasonable, affordable solution Smith could implement that would solve most of these problems. Alright, hear me out on this. We train professors how to teach. Since I stepped foot on this campus, it has been glaringly obvious that professors are not teachers. They know a lot about one specific thing, and they talk about that thing, but that's not teaching. And this might be the speedrunner in me, but I think we could probably teach them everything they need to know in a day. It would be like the alcohol training courses for the HCAs, Smith's version of an RA. And to show how easy this would be to teach to the professors, I'm going to teach you right now with Ali Rosenthal's official UDL crash course. That's right, we're doing UDL! I'm standing up for this part so it's visually distinct from the other ones. I bet you don't even remember when I told you before when I said we're gonna get further into UDL. I bet you totally forgot, but guess what? I didn't. 'Cause I wrote the script. This is a disclaimer before the next part. I'm not really sure what got into me, but somewhere during this next segment, I kind of channeled like a preacher, like motivational speaker character. I don't know. Just a warning. Hello professors, and welcome to my course where I make you learn stuff that will help you make other people learn more stuff. There are 3 core principles to universal design for learning, but it's really all about providing options. The core tenets are engagement, why, representation, what, and expression, how. Sometimes people say action, expression. I like expression because I think it's more accurate. I'm sitting back down. Engagement is about making your class applicable to your students. For K through 12 teachers, this is actually really hard. Imagine trying to convince a room full of 12-year-olds that are there against their will that they should care about the Babylonian Empire. But you guys already have an advantage because your students are there voluntarily. In fact, it's quite possible that some of your students wanted to be there so bad that they took on a life-ruining amount of student debt just to hear you lecture about ancient Babylon. Now, isn't that sweet? If after all that students aren't coming to your class, well, I do hate to say it, but it is a skill issue. But we're here to fix that. You're in luck. I mean, I don't have all that much advice because I'm 22 and I'm only minoring in education. But whoever they pay to teach this course, they sure as hell will. Imagine having a class so good that students only skip when they're actually sick. How incredible would that be? You could have that. But since we're here, I guess the advice I have for you is try your best. Like, actually try. I mean, like learn how to make a lesson plan and then do that for every class. Crazy. And you know what? While you're at it, talk to your students. Ask them how they're doing. Make them feel like you see them and you'll notice if they aren't there. Just something as little as that can go a long way. No one wants to teach these days. Everyone just wants to lecture. Well, guess what? You're gonna start teaching. Because I see the fire in your eyes. I know you want to. You want to engage your students. You want to represent the information in new and interesting ways so that they'll learn and grow and go into the world and create cool stuff. And here's how you're gonna do it. So first things first, for humanities professors, you do not always need to assign readings. You know, throw a documentary in. And in your class, you can implement little games, multimedia. It doesn't just have to be text on a slideshow. It's very hard to focus when it's text on a slideshow and you are just reading the text that's on the slideshow. Because then it's like, why did I show up? I could have just been in my bed reading this text on this slideshow, and it probably would have gone better because then I can actually take notes because you guys go really fast. And when you do assign readings, do yourself a favor, make sure every one of those is both digitally accessible and OCR compatible. Test everything you assign in the text-to-speech software before you assign it. I use Natural Reader. You can download that right now. It's free. Download it and plug it in, and if it doesn't work, and I need you to hear me on this one, you need to figure that out. If you can't do that before the school year even starts, How are your students going to be able to do that when they have 4 other classes and a part-time job? Audio accessibility is one of the most common accommodations, and students without accommodations will also benefit. And fun fact between you and me, letting your students know that they can download the text-to-speech software and put the thing into the text-to-speech, more students are going to do your readings. Making it easier for students to do your readings leads to more students doing your reading. How cool is that? Imagine a class where you ask about the reading and everyone's hands shoot up. This is the future we could be living in. We can make that future together, you and me. Action, expression, whatever you want to call it, this tenet is about how you evaluate your students' learning. What do? Do you give them a test? Do you give them a paper? Those are the only 2 options? Well, I got news for you. There's more than those options. There's infinite options. The options are only limited by your own mind, and I'm about to expand it right here today in this workshop. You're not a professor anymore. You are a teacher. Because listen up, buddy. Come close, come close. Not everything has to be a 10-page paper. Repeat after me. Not everything has to be a 10-page paper. Hallelujah. Can you feel it? Can you feel the Lord with me? Having some different options for students to express their understanding makes it so that they get to choose the way they best communicate. So you'll be able to tell if your student doesn't understand the material or is just a bad test taker or at writing essays. Here's just a few suggestions for alternative assignments. Draw a comic explaining the differences between Rococo and Gothic architecture. You can make them into little personified characters, and the Gothic one's all goth, and then the Rococo one's all like French. I don't know. I'm not an architect, but you are, and you're going to teach your students how to do it. Instead of a test, you can have your student have a conversation with you. Make them explain everything about Stalin's rise to power, and if they leave something out that you think they know, you could prompt them a little bit. Or try to trip them up. I don't know. If you want to be that guy, you can try to trip them up, because you are a teacher. You can have your student make a quilt that demonstrates their understanding of why supply side economics is a crock of and then you get to keep the quilt. You know why? Because you're the teacher. You can even have your student make a video essay explaining why accessibility at Smith is trash and have them propose solutions. Because they can be the change you want to see in the world. You know why? Because you're a teacher. Also, if a student has an idea for how they want to express their knowledge, you hear them out. Maybe they love making choose-your-own-adventure games. Let them do it. You might even use that idea for an assignment later because you're the teacher and you're always learning. First rule of teaching, you're always learning. And for the love of God, give your students extensions! Every education professor that I've ever had has had no questions asked. 2-day extensions as a given. You fill out a form and then you get the extension. Why can't you do that? You can! Whoa! The Lord's leading through me. You know why? Because he is a teacher! He is a teacher! Bit's over, character's gone. Except the accent's still here. Nope, that's gone too. Alright, cool. I'm ready to conclude the video now. Conclusion, title screen, blue. And it would be just that easy. Once a year, one day, a couple of hours, you get someone to do that. You can get someone with an actual real master's in education versus me with my aspirational bachelor's in film media studies. You could even hire one of the EDC professors you already have, because believe it or not, they actually know what they're talking about and you should listen to them more. Look, I know it won't fix everything. Obviously, the access van system needs a complete overhaul. ODS needs more than 2 employees. Our elevators are garbage. They really need to get fixed. But of course, I know that convincing Smith College to dip into their meager $2.5 billion endowment won't be easy. I mean, they only spend that money on really important things, like ugly buildings no one needs or wants or asked for, and researching innovative new ways to not pay the dining hall cooks. And hopefully, it's a good enough deal to convince the board to take a risk and spend money on something that will actually make the college better. Thanks for watching all the way through. I worked hard on this video and I really appreciate it. Special thanks to Dr. Professor Chow, Dr. Professor Audley, Bailey, and Morgan for the interviews. I really appreciated it. This video wouldn't have been possible without it. And please, powerful people at Smith, if you're listening, I'm sorry I made fun of you, but please try my idea. I really think it'll work. I think it'll do good. Come on, please. Please. And while we're at it, how come there's that thing where there's like a piano in every house, but there's no drums in every house? Like, you know, as far as instruments go, like, come on. Way cooler, right? This has been a wild ride. Goodbye.
Like, there has never been just a class where I'm like, this is just super accessible.
That have better kind of wraparound services. So, for example, at Smith, the Office of Disability Services is essentially one person for 40% of 2,000 students, which is a lot. And I know that other colleges often have a more robust ODS service.
Perfect. Well, I mean, not. That sucks.
Perfect.
It's like, yes, you guys are suffering.
Doing a universal design for learning, such as automatically having all PDFs be screen reader available, just as kind of like the basis.
Just wanted to give you up.
It's exactly what I need, and also I'm really sorry.
That was perfect.
That was perfect.
Your pain is
No,
perfect.
your pain is just what I need.
Capitalize on that.
But I think that the ways in which professors are trained to teach aren't trained to reflect or think about the role of disability in the classroom, and the way in which that students are whole people